Right, good morning everybody. Shall we get going? Welcome to this Finance and Economic Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Bridget Lay and will be chairing the meeting today with Councillor Gareth Knight as my Vice Chair and Amy as the Democratic Services Officer. Can I remind members that the meeting is being recorded and can also be watched as a live stream or later via the SKDC webcast. It would be appreciated if mobile phones could be switched to silent, please. There's no schedule for a fire drill today, so if we hear the alarm, please make your way to the nearest exit to the assembly point on the green at the front of the building. If you wish to ask a question or make a comment, please can I request that you indicate by raising your hand. So the first item is public speakers. Amy, do we have any public speakers today?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We haven't got any public speakers today.
Thank you. Do we have any apologies for absence?
We've received apologies from Councillor Lee Steptoe and Councillor Paul Martin will be filling the Conservative vacancy today. Thank you.
Thank you. So if any members have got any interest to declare, then you can either do that here and now, or you can do it throughout the meeting. Item 4 is minutes from the previous meeting. If anybody has any comments to make on those. If not, then if I could have a proposer. Is that as a proposer, Max? Thank you. Seconder, Gloria. All those in favour, please. Was there any abstentions? Sorry. 2. Thank you. Updates from the previous meeting. All actions are complete. The thing about the leisure centres reserve is coming up later in the agenda. So item 6 is announcements or updates from the Leader of the Council, Cabinet Members or Head of Paid Service. Councillor Cleaver.
Thank you. I'm sure people are already aware of this, but I will formally announce it to the committee. The special offer for Christmas parking charges across the district will consist this year of free parking in Grantham car parks on Fridays throughout December, starting on the 1st of December and ending on Christmas Eve, or the last Friday before Christmas Eve to be accurate. And in Stamford, there are 4 hours free parking from Monday to Thursday, again between the 1st of December and the Christmas Eve. So that is already in the public domain, and all the changes are being made and will be publicised, obviously, in the coming week, in the run-up to that. And I've already had quite good feedback from it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So then we move on to agenda item 7, which is the key performance indicators. This is for noting and for us to review. So, Councillor Knowles, please, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is to introduce the KPIs for the corporate plan that was agreed in January 2024. The items on the plan for the finance were agreed in March 2024, February 2024, and there are 15 actions within the measurements for this meeting. Of those, 12 are rated green and 3 actions are at the moment above target as planned. The green items are above our item as planned, and 3 actions are under review. Once again, my thanks to Charles for his assistance in producing these figures, and also for any special information he has in answer to your questions, should you have any. So I ask you to note and to review, and once again I ask you that these are not set in stone. If you feel that they are not meeting the needs or they are surplus to requirements, by all means review that as a committee. They're your targets, your ideas, and so you can decide whether you feel that they are appropriate. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Knowles. Are there any questions on the KPIs at all? Councillor Gill and then Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you. I have a question about Econ 6, which sounds a little bit like management speak. Strategically, well, I'll quote this, strategically leverage the council's procurement spend to maximise social value. I think in practice that means buying locally where possible. Why is it taking so long to develop that? I mean, you say that these were developed in 2024. Why is it taking so long to implement and develop that social policy? I mean, that's seen as on target. I would have thought that would have been quite a quick win for us. Is it shrouded in management speak, or why is it taking so long? Thanks.
Mr. Wiles?
Yeah, social value isn't, it's not local supplier spend. It's in respect of when we go out to the market with specifications, we stipulate amount of social value, which is basically reinvestment back into the community. So it could be through apprenticeships, it could be through workshops, it could be through training. Lindham have been particularly good in this space over the Swinegate development and the depot development, which is about encouraging young individuals within the community to develop a passion for the construction industry. So I think what this is trying to say, under the Procurement Act 23, there's been a bit more emphasis placed on social values within contracts, because within the scoring, it does have a weighting attached to it, and in the past we've not been particularly developed as a council in recognising social value through our contracts. They tend to be just cost and quality. So it is a change to the rules, and it's a change to our contract procedure rules that council recently signed off, to make sure we are maximising that opportunity and making sure that investment does go back into the community as part of any of our big contracts that we let. Thank you.
Did you want to come back on that, Councillor Gill?
So 18 months later, why is that taking so long? Is this just very complicated legislation? That was very clear. Thank you for that. But February 24, these were agreed. Why is that taking so long? Thank you.
Well, it's a process. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a process over a period of things, which includes a variety of elements. It's not just one element. And so some elements have moved quicker than others, and some elements have got a legal background to them that have to be fulfilled. And some are a change of attitude and change of approach, and some are a change of the law or the way the Constitution has calls for these things to be done. So we've had, for instance, sorry, go on.
It was just really Jill can take some heart, because it has gone back on to target from Q2. So I think the direction of travel is positive. I do take the point, but the legislation for the Procurement Act only became enshrined in the last 12 months. So it is, we are, I wouldn't say we're behind the curve, but we're desperately catching up with the legislation, but also the opportunities that social value does bring to our community. And I will go back to the Lindham examples that are particularly strong in how, for example, the community centre on Trent Road saw a lot of investment coming from Lindham at no cost to this council as a result of social value being built into that depot contract. They're also doing work around the canal, and also they've been doing a lot of work at Grantham College and Grantham West Academy to entice up and coming the workforce of tomorrow to work into this, to go into the construction industry. So it is work in progress. I take the point that's being made, but hopefully the direction of travel is a positive one.
Thank you for that, both of you. Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. Count 12, ensure procurement is always compliant, fair and delivers value for money. Why is that one below target?
Can you put your mic on, please, Councillor Knowles?
Yes, sorry. It's not below target. It's under review at the moment as an ongoing exercise. So it's not strictly below target. It is being reviewed again as we go along, and there'll be further updates in Q4 as we go through the year.
Right. I'm just looking at the
Excuse me, sorry, Councillor Knowles, can you put your mic off? Oh. And Councillor Sawyer, could you put yours on, please?
All right, Phil. Looking at the table, it's got the quarterly overall status below target and the priority below target. So I don't know if Phil's clarified that or not. Perhaps a few more words might be in order.
Sorry, could you make that point again?
Yes, quarterly overall status below target, priority below target.
Sorry, Councillor Knowles, you haven't got your microphone on. Sorry.
I'll get it right soon. Now, there's a new financial system which is the heart of this, and it is a system in development, and as it develops it becomes more effective and fulfills the requirements entirely of the target.
Charles, did you want to come into that? And then David.
Yes, I would say just to update for Councillor Sawyer, I think what the confusion is here on page 2 on the table where you look at, KPIs, Councillor 7 down to 14. As you see the top of the table, it goes obviously quarterly overall status, index, priority action. That's an error as to how it's been pulled across. It's meant to be identical to the first page, but goes for quarterly statuses. So that's my fault there. I apologise for that. So that's where the confusion lies.
Thank you, Charles. David?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to say, I think with the go live of the new finance system, we've prioritised certain reports in terms of budget monitoring reports and things like that, and the next phase is to make sure we get some of our performance reports out of the system. So that's why we've not been able to report it for Q2 for the go live, but we've got a note to say that for the next report we will have that information around that procurement side of it. I know the procurement officer is engaging with services all the time, so I'm not expecting hopefully nothing to show adverse when we actually get into that, but obviously we need the data just to prove that point and have the conversations with the service areas to make sure they have followed the right processes at lower level spend. So that will be there for the next report.
Thank you. So I don't think we have any more questions at the moment. So this was just for noting. So thank you all for your comments on that. Agenda item 8 is Turnpike Close. And this again is to note. And Councillor Cleaver is going to introduce this one, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So as you can imagine, we were all on tenterhooks in case the project was going to be delayed at the very last minute by the privatised monopoly utility companies that we relied upon to connect the site up at the very end of the project to maintain electricity, water supply and sewerage. From past experience, as you may guess, it seemed likely that one or both of them would cause us a last-minute delay. For once, National Grid came in on time and completed their work satisfactorily. However, Anglian Water did not arrive on site on time and then had to return later to rectify their initial work. But following this delay, Anglian Water has now properly established the hydrant main connection to the site, and we are awaiting formal sign-off which will allow the building control to release the building certificate. It is anticipated that the contractor will formally hand over the site by the end of this week. Mobilisation is commencing, with the workshop and office fixtures being moved from the current Mobec Way site over the coming days. It is anticipated that the new site will be fully operational from Monday the 15th of December. This mobilisation has been well planned and we are not hanging about. With respect to the waste transfer permit we require from the Environment Agency, we are still in discussions with them in order to have this in place to go live. The delays, however, have not taken us over budget, neither will they have any adverse effect on the service we provide to our residents. Finally, I should like to thank Mr. Teasdale and the property team, along with Mr. Wiles, for their very, very diligent work on this project over the last year, and I hope the committee will echo this. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions along with Mr. Wiles and Mr. Teasdale. Thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Sawyer and then Councillor Turner.
Thank you again, Chairman. just so I wonder if there's any additional clarification available. Page 34, paragraphs 2.11, 12 and 13, relating to the Environment Agency. Do we have an additional update to that one? Oh, it was covering, yeah. Yeah, thank you, Richard.
Mr Wiles? Councillor Sawyer, could you put your...
Let's make sure with the new system this is not a feature. How many hours do we waste on this kind of... so the permit situation, just to be absolutely clear, the Environment Agency's view at the moment is we have a backup arrangement in place, which is the existing site. So the permit application went in February. They got around to looking at it in August, and from October they've told us it has been duly made. That's their words, not ours. However, as Councillor Cleaver says, the permit has not left the Environment Agency and therefore it hasn't been received by the Council. So, strictly speaking, we can operate from the new site, but what we can't do is store waste on that site, which is where street scenes waste would ordinarily be put into skips before it goes on to the disposal process. So the Environment Agency's view is we can continue to operate that service, but the skips would have to be continue to be housed at Mobeck Way. We're pushing back on that because we're saying Mobeck Way is now a lettable asset and we want to get an income from it. So our view to the Environment Agency is that is not a plan that we accept or can deliver. We need the permit, so everything goes across to the new site. We have still got time on our sides because we are still 3 or 4 weeks away from go live. The absolute contingency is they give us a temporary permit, which they're looking at the moment, which enables us to site waste on the new site. The third option for us is we can apply an exemption, which has a 3-month period attached to it, whereby we could put the waste on the new site and whilst we wait for the permit to be received by the council. So all is not lost. There are lots of conversations ongoing. The Environment Agency are very aware of our frustrations and our keenness to get this across the line as quick as, and we're exploring all these options in real time. So we're still hopeful we can move lock, stock and barrel across the new site on the dates that Councillor Cleaver has said. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Turner, please.
Thank you very much. I just thank you for that answer, Richard, because it answered half of the question I was going to ask. Just to clarify once more on Anglian Water, is that done now, or is it nearly done? Because it wasn't quite clear and it sounded slightly obfuscated. And thank you. And the final part was, I'm pretty sure at the last finance meeting we were told it would be the 8th of December, the go live, but it now seems to have slipped another week. Is that going to be continuous, or is that the actual? Thank you.
So, Mr Wiles or Councillor Cleaver?
So, just on Anglian Water, the timeline was, I think it was 22nd of October, off the top of my head, Anglian Water were due to make the connection. There was a, for those that are local will know, there was a gas leak outside Aldi, which closed that part of town, and a diversion was put up with urgent effect, which took the traffic to the site of Turnpike Close, which meant the Highways Authority wouldn't grant the licence to enable the control, the three-way traffic lights that were needed for Anglian Water to operate safely from outside the site. So they had to down tools. They gave us a new date, which was the end of November, to come back on site. We pushed back and said that's unacceptable because that's another 4 week added on to their. Again, it wasn't their fault, but equally it wasn't our fault. So Chief Executive and myself and others got involved. We got the Chief Executive of Anglian Water to bring those works forward. They took place week commencing the 3rd of November. There then had to be some off-site testing, but the certificate was issued yesterday by Anglian Water for that connection. So that has all been dealt with, and as Councillor Cleaver says, the building control certificate can now be issued. In terms of the absolute dates, Councillor Turner, we obviously sat here on the 18th of November. As has been said, the mobilisation can kick in once we take full possession, which we're hoping this week. We're still saying we will be in early December. Whether it's the 15th or whether it's the 8th is a moot point, because as soon as we're ready to go, we'll go. So it could be the 8th, it could be the 15th, but it's very much before Christmas and it's very much early December. Thank you.
Councillor Knight.
Thank you. I appreciate this isn't quite a closure report, and that'll be coming in February. But I think it's important that we recognise the success of this project. I think I was the only councillor who voted against it, and I partly did so because I just didn't believe it was going to happen. And I freely admit I was wrong about that. I think that the way that we've been given reports frequently. The fact that it does help that I drive past that site pretty much every day and can literally get stuck behind cement mixers and things for the last few months. It has been interesting to see. But congratulations to the officers and credit to Councillor Cleaver for his leadership on this project as well. And I hope that lessons are learned, because I think that if all major council projects can follow this pattern in the future, possibly with a little bit of tightening around the belts in some areas. I know there's been some concerns, but I think overall it's been a very positive project, and I'm sure that Councillor Baker will be looking forward to the massive Christmas present from Councillor Cleaver in the next few weeks that will hopefully get our waste services sorted for the next, for the foreseeable future.
Thank you for that. Councillor Sawyer, and then Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm inclining to go along with Councillor Knight. I'm almost starting to think this is a good idea, this project. I'm just wondering, if you rule this out as the wrong forum for raising this, I'm wondering where we're going to see some proposals for the use of the Mobex site.
Mr Wiles?
Well, there already is a short-term solution, which is to secure short-term lettings, and there's been quite a lot of interest in that site. We can break it up into component offers. To be honest, we had a bit of a light bulb moment, because I don't know if you're aware, but we talked to the county council a couple of years ago about taking the site next door as well and opening it up as a massive economic regeneration opportunity. The county were not interested because it wasn't a priority for them. But of course, now with one eye on LGR, that civic site becomes under the same ownership as the Mobeck Way site. So our view at the moment is, let's not look to sell it on and let's not look to dispose, because there's a bigger game in town potentially if LGR goes ahead, where we can parcel both sites together, and that looks a far more attractive proposal. So at the minute it's short-term lets to ensure we don't have the liabilities ongoing, and we can hopefully stimulate some SMEs and some small businesses to start up and use that site in the short term.
Longer term, reasonably optimistic, by the sound of it, Richard. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Gill?
Well, Councillor Sawyer rather stole my question there, actually. I was going to ask about what work was being done about the Mobeck site. But just to add a little bit more colour to that, is a report going to come back to us about proposals for the Mobeck site? And it sounds as if there is work being done there, but are we going to see that through a report of some description to see options? And if you could just looking at the final table on 2.7, mobilisation period and operational go-live period. So it sounds, just to summarise, that it looks as if there's a 2-week delay because of our reliance on agencies, but that's going to have no impact in the budget and shouldn't have too much of an impact on the operational go-live. Can you just explain to us in a little bit more detail what the difference is between a mobilisation period and an operational go-live period? I guess the question for the general public is, when will bin lorries be leaving from the new site, effectively? Yeah, thank you.
Mr Wiles?
I'll answer the first one. In terms of the Mobeck site, we're happy to bring back to the committee at a later date our proposals with it. We are moving it quite quickly because we're very conscious that it is a site in the town centre, and once we've moved out, it's a fairly abandoned site. So I'm not going to say what that risk is, but I'm sure members will understand what that risk is. It'll be quite expensive to put Harris fencing up and to start putting those concrete blocks around it and to pay A1 security. So we are moving at pace to secure some tenants down there, just really to get some presence back and to ensure that we don't have that liability. It just really falls into our asset management portfolio. So we don't see it as a strategic conversation with the committee, but we're more than happy to share how that's progressing at a later meeting, if that's helpful. Giles will answer the question about mobilisation.
Did you want to come back on that point, Councillor Gill?
Yeah, just briefly. It's been raised in the town with me several times that there is significant concern about that Mobec site becoming void. Because of the potential for antisocial behaviour and things, and so it looks as if there's work being done there to avoid a large void being done there. But I think that some reassurances into Grantham would be extremely helpful. I mean, it was raised with me as recently as last week that there's concern that could become a void site for a long time. So yeah, some public reassurances on that will be extremely helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. The second part, Giles, is that you're going to come in? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, so just in terms of the mobilisation and the go-live definition, essentially. The mobilisation period is when SKDC have taken control of the site, essentially, so there's no Lindum in control of the site, and we would take over liability for any insurance, etc., going forward. And it's also the period of which we will stagger bringing over services from Mobec Way and Turnpike. So there's obviously more than just the waste service going in there. There's health and safety, there's street scene and repairs. So there will be a phasing of bringing those services across. The go live is really just the completion of bringing all those services across, and it would be business as usual from the go live date, and all services will be across there.
Is that okay? Yeah, Councillor Gill, did you want to come back at all?
Yeah, no, that's great. So December the 15th, we can expect bin lorries leaving from fabulous. Thank you very much.
I have to say, I've been on the board as just somebody that's observing, and I've attended nearly every board, and the discussions that have taken place there have always been challenging back towards the building works and the permit and everything else to make sure that this project is brought in as near to time as possible. And I think we really need to formally record the thanks to Giles and Mr Wiles and all of the team, because they've all worked really hard at making sure this happens. And like the permit has been chased every week for months. So, I'd just like to formally record the thanks to all of those staff, and we look forward to seeing that open. Okay, so that was just for noting. Excuse me. We'll move on to agenda item 9, which is the Leisure Investment Reserve allocation criteria. And this is to support the allocation of the funding of 500k to refurbish the changing room facilities across all the centres, and recommend that Cabinet consider a further allocation of 500k to the Leisure Investment Reserve within their budget proposals for 26-27. And Councillor Stokes is going to talk about this for us.
Thank you, Chairman. In many ways, I think this particular item represents a triumph of compromise and negotiation. Cross-party working across overview and scrutiny committees, especially with the Leisure and Cultural Committee, with this particular committee, and above all shows that members and officers have been listening to the community. The report itself follows on from a report presented to the committee on the 23rd of September, when the criteria was actually agreed for the allocation of the 500k Leisure Investment Reserve. At that meeting, it was agreed to work with external consultants to develop an investment programme across the 4 leisure facilities, particularly focusing on the customer-facing element, where their urgent need of investment was required. I think we should also recall that significant money is being spent on the leisure centres and the facilities, and also there is a planned programme beyond this. Visits to each of the locations took place during October, and the following areas were inspected: changing areas, reception areas, public toilets, meeting rooms and other communal areas. The view is that the funding should be primarily focused on the changing areas and facilities, as these have been the most negative impact on the customers and have not been adequately maintained for many years. I would like to invite officers to show members a sample of the photograph taken for each of the locations showing the proposed investment areas. Caught them out on the hop, I don't think.
Okay, so this isn't intended to be absolutely fully extensive. It's to give members who aren't perhaps familiar with these locations a flavour of some of the immediately obvious issues at each of the sites. So I'm not going to do a Chris Whitty because that's been done to death. But so basically we're focusing on the 4 sites as per the September report, which are the 3 centres and the stadium. So the first slide just reminds you of that particular site. These are what we define as wet side changing areas. So those familiar with the Mearsley Centre, this is where predominantly pool users would use this particular facility. Giles will help me because his property eye is better than my finance eye. But on the far left, you can see corrosion to one of the steel parts of that changing area. This is a shower area, shower cubicles, and then you can't see it, but on that shower head and the tiling on that particular wall, there's grout, mildew, and general corrosion of that part of the area. The far right, you can see a door that's been very poorly repaired in the past, and a piece of wood has basically been put across the bottom, which I assume has been splintered at some point in the past. And then in the centre there, you can see, hopefully you can see, the ceiling tiles are all different patterns as over the years tiles have been replaced and no care has been taken to try and blend or match up the tiles, and you can presumably see as well that some of the lighting isn't working either. Just move on to other parts of the changing area. On the far right, you can see on the decor there, the wall, plaster's fallen off, and nobody has attempted to make good on that, so you can see obviously the paintwork's come away. The door at the bottom again has been manually kind of repaired, where it's been either kicked in or damaged. You can see on the panel there, the vertical panel on the side of the shower cubicle, again, it's been eroded away over the years of wet, presumably moisture hitting that panel. So there's been some fading of the structure itself. And then on the left, more evidence of ceiling tiles and just general, there's a general yuck feeling about these particular slides. So in terms of, I think that's the changing rooms changing areas of the Mears. So if you move on to Stamford Lay Centre, obviously a smaller offer, but equally similar issues all throughout in terms of the general poor standard of cleanliness, general corrosion of fixtures and fittings and sanitary ware. Curiously, you can see some kind of homemade doors that have been put onto where the changing area interacts with the wet side, pool side, so when the pool's closed. Clearly wasn't part of the original design, but in later years, a very stereotypical pink door and a blue door have been, gates have been put up, which obviously don't fit at all the actual area of the door itself. And again, on the left-hand side, you've got tiles, ceiling tiles, that don't match or attempt to match either. Just move on. Just in terms of some of the fixtures and fittings and the sanitary ware, the bottom picture is a cistern that's been replaced in the past, and again the previous shape of that cistern is now exposed. There's been no attempt to make good on the decor. We've also got again some of the vertical panels have corroded and worn away over the recent past, and the floor itself, you can see damage to the grouting and the adhesive fixtures to the flooring, where over time there's been a poor standard of cleanliness and poor kind of upholding the cleanliness that's required. If you go on to Bournley Centre, similar sort of theme again coming through. You've got very old, basically a very old offer. I think Bourne was 1990, so we're talking 35 years old. This is some of the original fixtures and fittings that were put in from day one. So the recommendations within the report are to really not only deep clean these areas, but replace and upgrade a lot of the supports and the changing areas and the sanitary wear. Let's move on. Probably the Bourne similarly has got a strange little gate arrangement that's been put in. You can see a bit of a stable door kind of structure that's been put in place, which obviously doesn't match the door frame itself. I don't think you see it on these pictures, but some of the changing facilities themselves, the cubicles, there are no hooks for users to put their clothing on when they're coming out of the pool and clearly are wet, and they're trying to need somewhere to put their clothes onto hooks. They're missing, and also some of the horizontal seating is missing out a couple of the cubicles as well. So there's literally nowhere for somebody to sit down while they're getting changed, which obviously with children is particularly quite difficult. So Bourne, similar state in terms of the issues it's got. The stadium, I think it's the final set of slides. This is focusing on the changing areas for the stadium, probably in a slightly worse condition actually, but it is a similar age building, early 90s when it was constructed. But you can see on the far left, you've actually got ceiling tiles missing. You can see it again on the bottom. You've also got stained ceiling tiles on that one as well. What am I seeing on the far right? Stained cubicle doors and general, poor condition of those. If you go on as well, again you can see where there's either been a leak or there's been a repair on that bottom right picture, and no attempt's been made to put the decor back to the standard it needs to be. You've got poor lighting in those areas as well, and you've got overall poor cleanliness in that location. So that's just a very quick overview of the issues that were found in the changing areas.
Thank you for that. So now we'll take questions. So Councillor Sawyer and then Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't have a problem with this. We have assets and I think we're obligated to ensure they're fit for purpose. Could I recommend that an explanatory press release be prepared to mollify those residents of Bourne and Stamford who will say, look at this, Bourne gets 100,000, Stamford gets 100,000, Grantham gets 300,000. So I think something more than the bare figures should be put out there to explain the reasoning and the thinking behind this. As I say, I have no problem with it, but it's the optics.
Mr. Wiles, would you like to come back on that, please?
Yeah, I think we said at the last meeting, and it was in the report and certainly in the presentation, that we do accept that the 500 is a glass ceiling, because I think it's very obvious from each of these sites we could spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands on it, and each site does have a legitimate claim for more investment than we're able to give it. But I think we're also mindful we are trying to balance the 500,000 over 4 sites, and by definition the Mearsley Centre and the stadium are possibly in worse condition for a host of different reasons, partly because it has the highest usage as well, and we gave you those figures I think at your September meeting. So the traffic going through these parts of our estate are greater, and I think that is reflected partly in how we've allocated that money out. We don't, and I think it is important to say, we don't suggest for 1 minute this fixes everything, hence why I think it is appropriate for this committee to consider whether it wants to request further funding goes into this as a kind of more thorough programme of works, because when there are further photographs that show both reception areas are in poor condition, communal areas are in poor condition, corridors that the public use, there are stainings on carpets and on walls. There's so much more to do, but I think what we've tried to do here is recognise that it would be appropriate that all the centres get an allocation, and we try and make the most we can for every pound we spend at each of those locations, hence why we've come up with the programme we've come to. But yeah, I absolutely get the point that I guess for us, we've been trying to be blind by the locations. We've tried to be guided by the evidence and how we can best get the amount of the money we've got.
Did you want to come back, Max?
Thank you, John. Richard has identified precisely some of the points I think should be made, and would make it an easier sell to certain residents in our area.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed the Grantham sites are getting basically 4% of the budget, £20,000 spent on decorations. I was just wondering, I mean, obviously money's tight across the board with this. What exactly does decorations entail? Because for Grantham, it says on here that Grantham's getting 11k decorations and the sports stadium's getting 9k. There's nothing under the Stamford or Bourne one, so I just wondered what that actually means. Thank you.
Giles, is that you? Would you like to come back on that, or is that Mr. Wiles?
So in terms of decoration, that would be obviously to your walls, plasterwork, etc., like we saw in the photos. I'd expect that to be carried out around the whole of the changing area itself. That wouldn't include your more specific items, so fixtures and fitting replacements and ceiling tiles, etc. Now, in terms of the lawn and other areas, the full suspended ceiling would be itemised there, and we would just, I'd need to obviously, I could take that and raise that back with the surveyors at the point on the decoration, but I think there may be tiling in there that may be deep cleaned rather than decorated, so it's obviously just the cosmetic element there.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Martin?
It's a bit, I mean, not really, to be honest, but I mean, obviously, it just seems very odd, doesn't it? It sticks out decorations. Yeah, I mean, in my mind, it doesn't make sense, but, you know.
Mr. Wiles, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I think if it helps, this has obviously been done by a consultant. This hasn't yet gone to the market, and therefore what we'd do is develop a specification that goes to the market. Then we'd get bidders come forward and give us a programme of works. I think this is giving you the essence of where the consultant believes you'll get the most return for the investment you get. But you absolutely get the point. If at Bourne it turns out that the walls need some decorational improvements, or it needs a repainting once they've done these changes, then absolutely we'd build that into that contract to make sure that's done. We're not trying to undersell any of these locations. This is the consultant's preliminary findings on where they believe you'll get the most return from that investment. But as I say, they are subject to market testing anyway, and we'd have to do a full programme of works to back each of these up.
Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for arriving late first. I had something I had to deal with, I'm afraid. To echo what Mr. Wiles just said, the numbers look very neat and everything, but the report admits basically they're guess numbers at the minute. You know, we're waiting on the costs to come in. What happens if and when we go above that glass ceiling, as you said, Richard, there? And also, I think we ought to be looking, as somebody else said, these are our assets. We do need to be looking after our assets, and unfortunately, there's a cost involved. It's not like we're frivolously spending and putting Christmas decorations or whatever. We're actually making these functionable buildings. So I think maybe we need to be looking at maybe more recommendations so that Mr. Wiles and his team can do their job properly and refurbish all the buildings properly. Just wonder on thoughts on that, and if Mr. Wiles could tell me what happens if we go above that.
Are you going to reply to that, Councillor Cleaver? Or?
Sorry, I was just going to make the point that it's been a constant theme of this administration for the last 2.5 years that we look for funds to maintain our buildings properly as they haven't happened in the past. Thank you.
Mr. Wiles, did you want to come back on Councillor Harrison's detail, please?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point. They're not quite, I'm not sure what the phrase was, they're not quite finger in the air. They are based on bulk costings. They are subject clearly to the market itself. And as you know, we are developing through the new contract procedure rules local supply chains. So we are hopeful we can use local labour and local materials to source a lot of this work. So the flip side is we might be able to get more out of the allocations than less. But taking the point that if these come back above the prices that we've got in here, then there is a conversation we need to have with the administration to say whether we want to use some of the property reserve to bolster, because it would be, and I think Councillor Knight made the point at previous meetings, it would be remiss of us to put all this time and energy into this and come up short because for the sake of £30,000, 40,000 we could have done absolutely the most we could have done with that opportunity. Because there will be some disruption to these centres, which Leisure SK will be very aware of, so we want to hit it hard and get the most we can. So I think if we do stray above the 500, then it's certainly a conversation I would have with the administration to say whether we want to dip into the property reserve, which is there for general property investment, to see whether further allocations could be made whilst the opportunity is in front of us.
Did you want to come back on that, Councillor Harrison?
Yeah, thank you. That's really good news here that we're not going to get any sort of value engineer or anything like that. We are going to see the job through, so really pleased to hear that. And just, if I can respond to my colleague Max here, if you go and look at the stadium at the Mears, it says South Kesteven Stadium. It's not Grantham Stadium, it's South Kesteven's.
Okay. I have Councillor Knight. Sorry, that was my phone. Then Councillor Gill, then Councillor Murray, then Councillor Johnson. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so this has been a thing of mine for, well, the whole time I've been a councillor. I've had tours of the facilities on at least 2 occasions, and there's no doubt it's probably the single biggest issue that is raised with me over the period. If I was to add up all the people that have commented in some way, shape or form on various different issues, the state of the Grantham change in facilities is the biggest one by far. And I know that colleagues in Bourne and Stamford get similar levels of grief about their change of facilities as well. I very rarely hear any criticism of the stadium, but the main Mears changing village is huge. And I think the difference between me and various officers, possibly Councillor Cleaver as well, is that I don't really see this as a maintenance issue. I see this as effectively a marketing issue for Leisure SK, so that we're able to actually make the centres as attractive as possible, which in turn then reduces the amount of subsidy that they may require from the council. And bearing in mind the various different changes the council is facing, I'm acutely aware that we could end up with a deeping scenario where something major goes wrong and we don't have the money to pay for it. Therefore, we've got to make sure that Leisure SK is operating as healthily as possible in a financial sense. That said, I think that the issues in Bourne and Stamford being relatively small change of facilities, I say relatively, they're still fairly substantial, but relatively small change of facilities, I think that a lot of that is because they're out of date and they can actually be scrubbed up quite nicely, and you wouldn't necessarily do a huge amount with them other than refurbish and modernise them a little bit. The Mears, I think, is a different kettle of fish, not least because it's a unisex changing village as opposed to individual changing rooms. My question, and this is a genuinely open question because I appreciate this council's coming at this from different perspectives, but my instinct is that I would rather see money being spent in Bourne and Stamford and the Mears to get it up to the standard we want in the first instance, rather than potentially taking what some may interpret as a sticking plaster approach. Now, I appreciate it's not as simple as that. Instinctively, obviously, having this as more money coming in the future would be great, but my gut feeling is that we should, in this first year, drop the £100,000 on the stadium completely and look at seeing if that money can get Bourne, Stamford and the Mears up to a standard that would therefore secure the quality of that change of facility for the long term. I'm acutely aware as well that the stadium, although yes it is a community facility, is primarily used by a football club, and there are various different issues going on with the lease of that stadium to the club that we perhaps don't want to be anticipating in this meeting when it comes to the facilities we're providing and maybe providing in terms of a new lease. So I throw that out there. I'd just be interested to know, would that £100,000 on the stadium be better spent elsewhere, and we perhaps then look at the stadium in the following financial year when we may have a better idea as to what's going on with the football club? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Knight. Mr Wiles, would you like to come back on that at all?
guess from our perspective, we presented what we believe to be the criteria that we were asked to focus on at the September meeting, and if you look back at that report, it clearly said the stadium was within scope. So I guess that's the first. We've gone down that path because that's the committee's ask at that particular point. I'm not sure if 100 divided by those three is going to make a marginal difference. In all honesty, and I mean, the point has been made. SK Stadium is SK Stadium. It's not Grantham Town Football Club Stadium. So it is an asset owned by the council. Yes, there's a lease to a operator within it, but there are many users of that facility, not least the mini Olympics every year that SK hosts for the children of the areas, and it is a regional stadium for that reason. I think the pictures are probably quite shocking for a lot of people to see what state it's actually in as a customer. I imagine it's a very poor experience. So I think as it's within the scope of what we set out to achieve, I'm not sure taking it out at this stage would gain particularly an awful lot. But I guess it is partly a political conversation to whether members feel it doesn't warrant the investment. But we've certainly demonstrated from an asset point of view it does.
Thank you for that. Councillor Harrison, did you want to come back on this point, or Councillor Stokes? Because I know there's a few people that are waiting to talk. So
I think it's, yeah, I understand Councillor Knight's points, and I think I support what Richard Wiles has said, because I think it's very, very easy to underestimate just how many people we get obsessed with Grantham Football Club, and yes, they are a principal user, but there are an amazing amount of children use that stadium, and I have to say, we always forget that, as Councillor Harrison said, it is SK Stadium. The banners on the stands say SK Stadium. We've seen it there. It is South Kesteven Stadium. It was chosen by our forefathers as the stadium for South Kesteven. All the rural areas are using that, so there's lots of schools, primary schools, senior schools, using it for their athletics events. The mini Olympics are using it, which is across the whole of South Kesteven. The David Ross Games book it, and there are schools from all over South Kesteven using it again. There are various events available to be booked by anybody in South Kesteven, and I think it would be wrong for us to let that asset diminish to the point where people felt that it wasn't the right place to bring people from the rural areas. We forget the rural areas, around the Corby Glens and the Bitchfields, the Somerbys. All those people and their children are using that stadium.
Councillor Knight would like to come back on that point. Sorry, I know people are waiting. I'm really sorry about this.
Thanks, Councillor Stokes. I just want to clarify, I'm not saying we shouldn't spend any money on the stadium per se. I'm saying that at the moment we're spending no money on that specific thing, and I'm just saying it shouldn't really be the priority over others. And on the point about community use, absolutely, completely accept that. But every single football club stadium in the district is used by other organisations, for example, Harrowby United, and they pay for their own changing facilities. The difference with this one is that we're not asking, at the moment to my knowledge, because like I said, we're in the middle of a lease negotiation, we're not asking Grantham Town to pay for it. So it feels to me like if you are a community group based in the villages, if you're using Grantham Town Stadium, we'll pay for it. If you're using Harrowby United, they pay for it. And to me, that just doesn't quite sit right.
Councillor Harrison wanted to come back on this point. Okay, so I know you've really been patient, but I just want to get this point sorted and then everybody else can come in. Is that okay?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm a bit confused there with Councillor Knight. I don't think this money is just going on changing rooms at the Leisure Centre for a start. And I think it would help maybe if the committee wanted to come up. I'm quite happy to take you up and around the stadium so you can see for yourself. There are health and safety issues there that may arise. There are definitely security issues there that are arising from breaks in the fences and the gates and stuff like this. This is all stuff that needs doing. It's urgent stuff. It's not stuff that we can put off till we're sort of ready to do it. And as Mr. Wiles said earlier, if the other entities break their glass ceiling, he'll come back and ask for more money to touch that. I think it would be a grave mistake to leave the stadium out of there. And as I say, if any of you want to come up, I will take you around the stadium and show you exactly what's wrong and what needs doing up there.
Thank you. So we're going to move on, and it's, excuse me, Councillor Gill, Councillor Turner, Councillor Johnson, and then, oh no, Councillor Harrison's already spoken, so.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, so it looks to me that a lot of this work can be filed under the essential maintenance and overdue maintenance. I mean, going back to the conversation about the stadium, it's definitely true that, you know, local schools have their sports days there. I don't think the SK Stadium is the same as the other venues we're talking about. I mean, it has a sports pitch, it has lots of facilities there, and it is in a shoddy state. If you have assets, you have to maintain them. If you have expensive assets, you have to get more and more expensive the longer you lead them. So, I mean, the point I was going to make was to come back to Councillor Sawyer's point that he mentioned that a common strategy may be needed for those areas that are not receiving funding here. I think there's a danger here that we drop 500 grand and nobody notices, because a lot of this essential maintenance is sort of behind. Well, it should have been done, frankly, some of it years ago, and so I think a real common strategy needs to be in place for those users of these facilities and Grantham and Stamford and Bourne to kind of show what we're doing, because a lot of this is just essential maintenance that's a few years out of date. The only other point I was going to make, returning to what we discussed earlier on, and whilst, as I say, I think we need to see the changes that are made to our facilities. If we've got facilities, we need to maintain them. But in a previous report, we were discussing, and I'll use the Council's word again, strategically leveraging the Council's procurement spend to maximise social value. That's the Council speak. I presume we'll be doing some of that in this 500 grand that we're going to be spending on these areas. But as I say, I welcome this as being overdue. My concern is that we spend 500 grand and nobody notices, and I'd like assurance that there's a real comm strategy around this disruption being well used. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gill. Did you want to come in about that point, Councillor Cleaver? Okay, thank you very much. So, Councillor Turner, thank you for being so patient.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to reiterate that this follows a lot of conversations in the Culture and Leisure OSC, which has led to the generation of this £500,000, and how pleased I am that we've addressed those concerns and we're looking to tackle them in a responsible way. And I think it also very wise that all four assets are included, as they all need work doing on. Whether it's enough money or not, I'm sure I can have a conversation with the leader and other members of the Cabinet if we need more money for next year. But in the first instance, the publicity we should be trying to put out there is, we've listened to you, we're going to do up these changing rooms and make it a better experience for you when you use our leisure facilities. Here you go.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. One of the biggest items on all four leisure centres is this contractor preliminaries. What exactly are they, please?
Giles, is that?
So those are usually costs associated with the contractor being on site, so their welfare costs and any setup for compounds and the hire of their equipment to do the works. So that's what their fees would be. So we would have to allow for that within the contract. Otherwise, we would obviously run out if we just allowed for the specific works on their own.
Mr. Wiles, did you want to come in on that?
Just slightly picking up on Councillor Gill's point as well, and I think it is important we do position the comms around how this money is being spent, and because we've repeatedly said to the committee that unfortunately the maintenance strategy, having picked up and inherited a significant backlog, the Cabinet have been very clear that they want to tackle that backlog. So this is why I think I've been saying for quite a few months, hence some of the frustrations, that to get round to this sort of investment is very, very low down on the priority list of the condition survey findings. We spent 1.2 million on the leisure centres last year, and we're on target to spend 4.6 million on the centres this year. But that's on the maintenance, that's on the roofs, on the guttering, on the M&E, on the boilers, on the plant room. It's all the stuff the public don't see, but enables the building to function and open, which is where the origins of this conversation with Councillor Turner and yourself came from, because I kept saying, unfortunately, I know the changing rooms are grotty, but it's so far down the pecking order of the priorities. This is about keeping the building safe, warm and operationally sound. Those nice-to-haves are going to have to wait a lot longer, hence why we're here today talking about this. So it isn't just 100 going into Bourne. For this year, it's probably going to be over 500,000 going into Bourne, of which this is targeted on those changing areas. So I think the comms is important, because in isolation it may look like a drop in the ocean, but it's far from that. It's part of a comprehensive investment programme, of which this is now an added layer into that. So I think it's probably worth reminding not only ourselves in this room, but to the wider public, that there is significant amounts of money going into these centres from several different angles, of which now this is another dimension to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stokes.
So, Richard and Giles, if you just indulge me slightly, I feel I can tell Councillor Johnson wanted a little bit more on the prelims. So, just to expand on what Giles has eloquently said, the contractor's prelims includes all the head office costs, whereby for what we've talked about today, the contractor has to have a procurement manager and they have to have so all their overheads that they do that are non-site based are included in those contractor prelims, including all health and safety stuff that is done on a central basis. So those costs are there. I must admit, whenever anybody looks at prelims, they think, bloody hell, they always think that's a lot of money, but it actually also includes, and they're right, so any contractor is entitled to an element of overhead and profit. So those other items would be net, but their overhead and profit would be included in the prelims as well.
Mr. Wiles.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is obviously we haven't been to the market, as has been said already. Those figures are indicative, but it is fair that we show you that there is obviously a cost element to any contractor mobilising on site. There may be opportunities where we can mobilise the same contractor to deal with both sites, particularly in the south of the district. We'd expect those prelims to come down as a consequence, because that mobilisation can happen once. They could have a location in one, but then undertake the works from that one location, be it in Bourne or be it in Stamford. So I think there are opportunities for us to drive that down, but I think for the purposes of demonstrating how the allocation may be borne out, it's right that we are as transparent as we can be at this point. But we will be doing our best to drive that figure down, because the more we save on that, the more money is going into the centre itself.
Thank you for that. Councillor Cleaver, did you want to? Yes? Okay.
Thank you. Just to come back on a few points as the property portfolio holder. Councillor Knight, you mentioned the term sticking plaster. We don't have a supply of sticking plasters. When we have a property team who manage tight budgets with best value for money. Best value for money means making things last and building things to last. We've done it with the depot when we went through the project there of doing the costings. We will do it again here. We are not going to be putting stuff in that will only last a couple of years. Okay? We will make sure that what we do spend is spent correctly on stuff that will last and be solid. And you also mentioned about priorities. We haven't given any of the premises priority, any one of the premises priority over the others. They're all in this report. So there's not a question of priority. We are looking at need, and we are looking at this particular issue of items which never get to the top of the priority list because they are not structural. As Mr. Wales pointed out, they're not guttering, they're not replacement boilers, the things you have to do. the crumbling brickwork that you have to look at, the ceilings that are in risk of falling down. Those are the things that always get to the top of the priority list. And when you have a tight budget, things like redoing the changing rooms get neglected. And that's the whole point of us putting this 500,000 budget together to deal with the things that Councillor Geel are seen. The public will see them because they're the things they've been seeing and complaining about. They're exactly those things. And that's why we are doing them now, because we are getting a lot of public feedback to say the changing rooms look awful, the toilets look awful. We've listened and we're doing it. And that is the message that I'd like us to put out and make sure that people understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. A point I've made before, and no doubt I'll make again. I do hope we're doing all we can to ensure that we spend SKDC money on providing and improving SKDC assets to benefit SKDC residents before that money is lost under LGR.
Thank you for that. Councillor Martin.
It's just a quick point to note, really. In a year's time, the new leisure centre in Spalding opens. It's a £27 million build. I've always been concerned with the impact that might have on Bourne Leisure Centre, and I think that obviously it depends on how the people of the area, where they want to go, etc., for the use of facilities. But I've always thought it's something worth keeping in mind, is that coming down the line there could be a very large, brand new facility, literally 10 miles up the road from Bourne, and what impact it may have on the leisure services there. Okay, so it's just something to note.
Thank you for that. Okay, so what we need to do for this is support the allocation of the funding of 500,000 to refurbish the changing room facilities across all the centres. And the second one is recommend that Cabinet consider a further allocation of 500,000 to the Leisure Investment Reserve within their budget proposals for 26-27. Do I have a proposer for that, please? Councillor Harrison. A seconder? Councillor Turner. All those in favour, please. 6. Against? And abstentions, please. 2. Thank you very much for that. I think we had a really good discussion there. Okay, on to agenda item 10, which is the General Fund Finance, which again is for noting, and this is going to be presented by Councillor Baxter, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Committee. To present the Council's forecast 2025-2026 financial position in respect of September 25, the revenue and capital budgets. This report has already been presented and approved by Cabinet on the 4th of November as a result of how the meeting schedules planned out, but we welcome your review and noting of the report. In general terms, the fund is performing strongly, and currently we forecast an underspend of 499,000. Quite annoying that it isn't a round number, $500,000. This is mainly due to fuel price reductions, utility cost reductions, as a combination of lower consumption and lower tariffs, an increase in car parking income and planning fee income and green waste income. The salary vacancy continues to be monitored, and whilst not declared, it is on track to be achieved by the 31st of March next year. In terms of the capital programme, there is overall only a 1.26% variance for all schemes. Details of these are on table 4 of the report. Finally, the report provides information regarding the collection rates for council tax and business rates, which confirms no areas of concern at this stage of the financial year. In fact, I'd say that our collection procedures and our collections team are doing very well. So finally, Chair, I'd like to thank the people that have put this report together, Richard Wiles and his team, particularly David Scott and Claire Moses. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Do we have any? Oh, okay. Councillor Turner, Councillor Sawyer and then Councillor Harrison.
Thank you. Since the cardboard waste collection started, I can't see, unless I'm missing it, an income from that.
Councillor Baxter?
Yeah, through you, Chair. There wouldn't be. We are the Waste Collection Authority. We incur the costs of waste collection. The County Council is the Waste Disposal Authority, and so they get any costs or proceeds from the sale of the waste. The waste is worth more because it's cleaner and drier, the cardboard cleaner and drier, and there's less contamination generally in the bins. So it's a good news story for the planet and for recycling and so on. Good news story for the County Council, no doubt, whom we partner in our waste services. But no, we wouldn't get the additional revenue of any increased material.
Councillor Sawyer?
Thank you, Chairman. I rather like the look of the return on investments, 4.3%. I think that's pretty good. Could I ask, I don't expect an answer now, for any notice accounts, what notice period applies to those? I have an ulterior motive, and I'm trying to persuade Stamford Town Council to adopt a similar approach to its money.
Councillor Baxter?
Thank you. Our investments, we take advice from, they used to be called Link, and they're now called MFG. MUFG. I can't remember what that stands for, but they are there's only about 2 or 3 people in the industry that offer advice in this kind of way, particularly to local authorities. We take their advice and we weigh it up. Some authorities prefer to go with a cautious approach, others go for the risky approach. I think that we take a sensible, balanced approach. We talked about the particular investments in detail very recently. It may have been at Cabinet or it may have been at Governance and Audit. Governance and Audit, yes. So last week, if you look at the papers that work for Governance and Audit, you'll see where the money is invested and what we're getting from each one. I attend the internal drainage board meetings for Welland and Deepings. They have got some reserves that I think they're getting a very slightly better return on through investing in slightly different things, but it's different scales of money invested. So yes, I will pass on your compliments for our investment income to the team.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I think we'll all agree there's some generally strong work shown in this report, particularly around the income performance, the savings on fuel and utilities and tighter monitoring. So credit to the team for putting us in a better place than many authorities mid-year. But, and there's always a but, I've got a couple of questions. How much of this good budget news is down to one-off good luck and won't happen again next year? And then a question about the pay award that's in line with the National Award of 3.2 as endorsed by the Employment Committee and backdated. That then takes us in excess of the 2% that we budgeted. And I think I'm right, somebody can correct me if that's coming from the Local Priorities Reserve. So the pay award overspend is not being absorbed in the base budget, it's being plugged using a reserve. If we're already using reserves to fund the pay rise, how do we afford it again next year?
Mr Wiles?
Yes, so...
Beg your pardon?
Sorry,
did you want let's Mr Wiles first and then Councillor Baxter.
I'll just
Is that okay?
Councillor Baxter can give a far more detailed answer. Just really on the pay award, so as you rightly say, we went to council, we budgeted at 2%, and we settled at 3.2%. So the difference was, in the event of needing it, we'll go to the local priority reserve, but as the report shows, the direction of travel is positive, and we anticipate an underspending overall terms for the budget, and in that scenario, we won't be calling on the local priority reserve to meet the pay award increase that we have built in. So basically, we'll just use it from within. So you can see from the planning gains, the car park income gains, the fuel reductions, that headroom being created by those underspends and overachieving budget lines, we will use that to fund the pay award increase, and therefore we don't need to use our local priority reserve. In terms of, I think your phrase was good luck, I think what I would say is budget assumptions are set around October of the preceding year. So in October 24, we would have made some fairly pessimistic views about base rates, about money market performance, about the pay award clearly, but also about investment income and our fees and charge income. So we take a snapshot position, and obviously these at the moment are being very kind to us, so we've taken fairly prudent assumptions and we're falling below those assumptions, which is why we're creating the headroom in this report. So it does come back to how we built the budget, and obviously the market and the external forces are working with us at this particular moment, not against us. Hence why we're seeing the underspends. Sorry, Councillor Baxter wants to add.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter, did you want to come? Sorry, I must have missed that you put your hand up. I do apologise.
Sorry, there's no need for anyone to apologise. So the good luck thing, it's explained, or I explained in the run-in, that fuel prices, utility cost reductions have been good to us. We've got no control over those whatsoever. That's the free market. Everything that happens in Ukraine and Russia and everywhere else, as well as how much wind blows and how much energy prices are, we're not in control of those things. Increasing car parking income, on the other hand, is down to our, as we were talking about at the town team last night, increased footfall in towns, more people wanting to use our car parks, and there's probably more money to squeeze out of car parks if we really wanted to do that, but we're quite generous with our car parks. Oh, Richard's gone now. So there are some factors that are good fortune, but there are other things, including the effective management of what we do, that are better. On the staffing thing, your question was how are we going to make sure that we afford it next year. I think we've discussed at Employment Committee that 3.2 shouldn't have taken us by surprise. Councillor Knight said that, I think. So we will be using Councillor Knight's crystal ball to build into the base budget for next year a different estimation of what wages are going to be. But there's a lot of crystal ball gazing in this for budgets for next year. But yeah, as Richard has mentioned, best to hope for the best but expect the worst.
Is your point coming back on that, Councillor Harrison? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Very good politician's answer there, actually. You didn't answer the question I asked. So, the one was on the good budget news. It was, the specific question was, how much of it is a one-off look and how much and won't happen next year? So you said the car parks and that aren't, but I'm asking, you know, for sort of figures or percentages or whatever that we're looking at. You just repeated to me what I said to you, really. I said there was a lot of good luck in there and there was some other, but I'm asking for facts on it.
Councillor Baxter.
Okay, thank you. I refer you to table 2. The significant variances are outlined, and you can see that fuel and utilities is 430, I think, and then the income from Cat Market Car Park is 80, the green waste income is 100, and you go down that table, you can see exactly how much is from which one. You make yourself a little spreadsheet and work it out.
Thank you. Yeah, again, same thing. If we're going to split that down, yeah, I can read what's there, Councillor Baxter, but how much of that is down to savings that we've made by stuff we've put in, and how much of it is down to actual prices of the fuels and utilities? That's what I want, that little bit of drill down in it, not just total figures like that. I'll speak to Richard on Wednesday about it and get the information off him.
Okay, I've got Councillor Gill, who's waiting very patiently. Councillor Knowles, was your comment about that particular point? Do you mind if I just take that, Councillor Gill? Thank you.
Throughout this conversation, of course, there is good luck and there is good management. But prudent budgeting is good management. That's part of good management, not necessarily all good luck. Thank you.
Councillor Gill, thank you for being patient.
I have a specific question. Page 48 about planning fee income. So we've had a year where planning fee incomes are up, and that's making a significant contribution. Of course, planning fees are supposed to be a cost recovery service, and we're not supposed to profiteer from planning. Now, I understand that, you know, one-off years happen and that can be reinvested into the service, and I'd like to understand a little bit how that might happen. But are we considering lowering planning fees and encouraging people to do more development in the district? Is that a concern at all? And as I say, as planning fee income shouldn't be a revenue area for this council. We should be an enabler of people doing, building and doing the right type of building in our district. But as I say, the explanatory comment does sort of say that there's one or two one-off instances, so I can see how that can happen in a one-off year. But over the medium term, are we looking to either lower fees, or how are we looking to reinvest that in additional people or in the service? Thank you.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. We're certainly not getting more from fees than we're spending on planning. Planning is costing us a fortune. So I'm sure that we are within the law, as we are with car park income and green waste bin income and so on. Where it's ring fenced, no, we're not going outside the law. Are you suggesting that we put down planning fees? You're suggesting that we reduce planning fees?
Well, if there's no profiteering happening, then there's no need to. But planning fees are something that need to be reviewed at some stage. Obviously, if we are achieving excess income, because as I say, that's supposed to be a cost recovery service. But as the explanatory comments say, it could just be a 1 year.
Councillor Baxter and then Mr Wiles.
Yeah, we review the planning fees when we do the budget every year. It's in there, and we talk about the fees for burials and the fees for car parking and the fees for planning. I think that some of it is actually laid out nationally as a national thing, in which case we can't mess about with the law. But no, I mean, I'll take advice from council. If Mr Wiles wants to say that we are exceeding our legitimate income from planning, then please spill the beans.
I'd never say that on public record. The majority of planning fees are set by government, not by this council. The majority of the reason for the increased budget of 250,000 is because we had a very late notification from government of the increase that they put on the fees. In some cases, they went up over 10%. The government, for many years, hadn't increased planning fees at all, because they hold the levers on the increases, not the council. So when we budgeted on the assumption there was no increase in the system. A late notification came through, which were applicable from April 25, so it caught all councils off guard because they hadn't budgeted with the expectation the fee increase would come in. That's why we're running ahead of our budget. That will be corrected next year, but as Councillor Baxter says, it's not a cost recovery service by any stretch. It's still a cost to the taxpayer, but this increase is having an enormous contribution towards getting it more financially stable than it has been in the past. Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation. So, Councillor Sawyer, then Councillor Turner, then Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. To me, the only point to decarbonisation is if it saves money. And if it does, I'll support it. I notice table 4, I think it is, yes, £60,000 overspend on the decarbonisation scheme. Has that money gone, or is there a payback period to it?
Councillor Baxter.
Bills at the Mears Leisure Centre, which is where this scheme is going on, are £170,000 less each year. So if you look at that purely in terms of simple payback, I think the scheme, the overall complete scheme is about £3 million. and it's £170,000, so that would be slightly less than a 30-year payback. However, we weren't just doing it for the eco-friendliness, we're doing it to reduce the bills and because the system needed replacing. So we've got old combined heat and power units which have been removed, and we are replacing them with state-of-the-art modern heating, ventilation system that's fit for purpose. So it needed replacing anyway as part of the general upgrade of leisure centres, and as it happens, we found a system that is saving us money as well. And as it happens, it's also saving carbon as well, which most scientists would agree is good for the planet.
I'm just wondering, Chairman, how the overspend came about.
Mr Wiles.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that particular cost, which is a one-off cost, sat outside of the scope of the project itself. I think we had the consultants sat in where Councillor Knowles is now last week, presenting a very solid business case, and the payback was very clear to see that from that investment would generate savings from the utility consumption and the reduction in CO2s. This was part of the extraction of the current infrastructure that wasn't anticipated at the time of the scheme going ahead. It's had to be funded from the council itself rather than from the scheme, but it is a one-off exit cost that the council has incurred in putting in the new energy solution. So it is a one-off hit, and I think, as it says in the report, it will be funded from the property reserve as a one-off cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Chair. Just returning to Councillor Gill's question about planning fee income. I note from the 250 surplus, £250,000 surplus, that 162,000 of that were to do with a large solar farm planning application, which were quite complicated, and that the government increased the application for households, doubled it, so that explains a large amount of the increase. What type of building are we not encouraging by having, if I could ask Councillor Gill, lower fees? Because it seems like it's households and large solar farms that have added to the surplus, and there is no discouragement of anybody else who wants to build anything. Perhaps you could clarify what you meant by that.
Well, I can. I didn't realise that I was presenting today, but yeah. So it's the discretionary fees. So local developers who are looking to build houses are critical of the discretionary fees of this council. Now, what I say to local developers is that we have a housing service that work with local developers there's a real reason for those fees. Other councils charge those fees, but it's the discretionary fees that for developers. And I've referred them in the past to the planning team as to what they're getting for that service. So yeah. Did you want me to bring a report back to the next finance committee?
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Gill. Councillor Baxter, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would be interested in which developers have complained about which fees and when. Obviously, people also make comments about developers, so we might have some feedback to pass back the other way. But yeah, if people are complaining about the fees, I'd be keen to understand it.
Happy to pass those comments on and do some introductions there. Okay, I believe I've already done that, but okay, but I'm happy to do that again. That's absolutely fine. Thank you.
David, did you have your hand up? Did you want to come back in on this comment? On this point, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say the only thing I think where we have discretion is the pre-planning charges. That's the bit where we will help, and I suppose people to make sure they put the planning applications in the right way. So I guess there's a quid pro quo. If you want to make sure it goes through the process as easy as quickly as possible, then potentially it's a decision to be taken about whether they think that's worthwhile investing in that or not. But equally, that's all based on officer time and the time it takes to actually provide that support and what's invested in it. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to say on that point of Graham's there, I I'm sure there's many rural residents wouldn't be too chuffed if we started cutting the application fees on large-scale solar farms. However, the point I was going to bring on was green waste income. We're making £100,000 profit now, and I believe that was after we changed. Well, right, we're making £100,000 in this document, additional from what we had before. I understood at the time that we were justifying rises in the cost in order to say this was cost neutral, and I understand we changed the routes and we're now doing one less that's brought about this sort of increase in income. Well, I'm saying it again, aren't I? But basically, are we going to look to try and take that down again so that the cost of the green bins goes down after we've made that saving? Or what's going to happen with that money? Just wondering where it's going to go.
Short answer, no. Longer answer, I don't know if Mr Wiles wants to come in.
Mr Wiles.
I think just to be helped on the language of what this is about a variance comparing our budget against the actuals and the reality of what's occurring in the real world, if you like. When we set a budget such as green waste, we'll make assumptions around attrition rates where people might have an adverse reaction to any increase and think, I'm not going to subscribe in the future, I'm going to deal with waste in my own way, or where we think we make assumptions about the number of households that will join based on the build rates and the growth of the district. So we'll make a number of assumptions to arrive at our budget. All we're saying in this report is there's a variance against our assumptions. So it doesn't mean we're making super profits, it doesn't mean it's costing us less to operate our service, it just means our assumption that we built into our budget isn't proving to be wholly accurate. But bearing in mind that's about a £1.5 million budget, I would suggest we're pretty accurate on what our prediction is. So all we're saying is we're slightly outside of the tolerance when we set our budget at that time, which usually in that particular service area is because the fall-off rate of people walking away from the scheme is very, 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 very low. We'll make an assumption about a 1% reduction in householders taking the scheme up if an increase has to be made. And of course, the increases will justify the increase because of the fuel costs and the labour costs of delivering that service. But in the main, our fall-off rate of the service is very low indeed because people still find it a very attractive and efficient way of disposing of waste rather than the alternative of having to put it in the back of a car and take it to the local tip. That's all that variance is really meaning.
Thank you. Councillor Martin, did you want to come back?
Yes, just briefly. We currently charge the second highest rate for green waste in the county. And we were told in the Environment Committee that we changed the routes, which had saved a significant sum of money, which was where that came from. So I think from a resident's viewpoint, it would be useful to know that if the rounds have changed, we're doing one less than the three. I think it's through 3 down to 2. From my viewpoint, I think residents would rather see that come back into the cost of the bins. But I do understand exactly what you just said.
Just to be clear, and Councillor Baxter, remember these conversations we had, the round review wasn't about saving money, the round review was around cost avoidance, because our growth of the district was growing at such a rate, the rounds we're putting on were inefficient, because they were made over 10 years ago, but based on a very different geographical layout of a lot of the town areas. So what the round review has done is made that time more efficient to capitalise and maximise the amount of bins we can collect. So it was about cost avoidance, because had we not done that, I would have been asking Council for an extra £250,000 to put another round on. So what we've done is sweat that resource to make it as efficient as we possibly can. So that's why it was done. Thank you.
Thank you for that detail. This report is for reviewing and noting, which I think we have done. So we now move on to agenda item 11. Housing revenue account, and this is for Councillor Baxter to present, and again this is for review and noting. So, Councillor Baxter, please.
Okay, thank you. This report again was approved at Cabinet at the November meeting. The forecast pressure was first highlighted in the budget monitoring report presented to Cabinet on the 9th of September. But since that report, the forecast has increased to a projected overspend of 2.781 million. This overspend is the result of a number of factors, which include clearance of a maintenance backlog, which is well known, well publicised over many years, tackling the void turnaround times and improving performance from 79 days in March to 54 days in August. I can't remember what the figure was for May 23, but it was in the hundreds, certainly. So we've brought it down. I think we've more than halved it, and then we've started chipping it away again. So the third factor is the poor condition properties that are left in by some outgoing tenants. Not all outgoing tenants, but some outgoing tenants leave the property in a mess. Sometimes that's because they've been in the property for a long time and there's lots of remedial works to do after a customer's been in there for ages. Other times it's other reasons. Increasing labour and material costs and emerging legislative responsibilities and new statutory obligations, which is a bit of a worry. A preliminary breakdown of the forecast overspend attributable to these factors reveals. So this is a similar question that you asked me earlier on. A preliminary breakdown of the forecast overspend says 1.7 million has been addressing backlogs and meeting new performance targets, 0.35 million in inflationary and other additional material costs, and a potential 0.85 million in regulation changes. So I ask you to support the recommendation in the report to tackle this issue and to ensure sufficient resources are available to the service to continue and tackle the backlog. The report also sets out the capital programme, which is shown in the report, with supporting variance commentary. The main variance on the capital programme is the relation to the new build programme, which is currently showing a large underspend due to the timing differences of commencement for the various different new build schemes, which varies from Swinegate, where we've just had the ribbon cutting and handing over to the tenants who are very happy, through to Wellington Way, where I don't know if we've quite dug the ground, but we're about to dig the sod, or whatever we do. Sod the dig the sod, whatever. So there you are, Chair. I ask you to note the report.
Thank you. Mr Wiles, can I bring you in at this point? First of all, just because I know there have been lots of discussions around this and that you have expressed some concerns around this and going forward how we're going to be able to afford to continue in this vein. So if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of an update from your perspective on that first, please, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you. I think as Councillor Baxter said, we highlighted this as part of our first forecast, although and if you remember actually going back to February 25, I think in the Q3 report, we had an overspending that year as well, although not at the size of this one. So I think the clues were already coming to our attention that there was a problem in the HRA. Partly, and to be absolutely fair and candid, this is very typical of what a lot of social landlords are facing at this moment in time, because we've got this pressure coming from not only the regulator but the tenants themselves, but more importantly the government, who are introducing a whole range of new requirements on social landlords to aspire and meet. But at the moment there's no funding in the system to back and validate that. If members may be aware of New Burdens Grant, which is quite a typical funding source for the general fund where new obligations are placed on local authorities, the HRA hasn't got that in place. So all this at the moment is coming directly by all these different stakeholders, but with no funding to back it up. So the HRA, as we all know, is a ring-fenced account, so something's going to have to give to accommodate it. I think what we're presenting today and going to council with is a very short-term solution to deal with the here and now. This is still a forecast, so it does come with that caveat that we're still predicting another 4 months' worth of activity. And as Councillor Baxter said, there are legislation changes that are coming in. AWAB's law came in, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and that's still being worked through into the damp and mould obligations, and there's obviously new bids going into the system to deal with that on a longer-term footing. So what we are presenting is a short-term solution. The worry is that we're seeing is the 30-year business plan for the HRA, which needs to show a solvent and sustainably financial outlook, is showing the opposite at the moment. It's showing problems 2 or 3 years down the track. The only immediate relief we can come up with is, in the very short term, use the reserves, and Governance Nordic did create a reserve to deal with this at the year end. That was £1 million, so we can go to that in the first instance, but then that reserve is fully spent, so we're going to have to go to the priority reserve, but it will halve that reserve, so that will then starve investment in the actual service itself, which is going to be to the detriment of the service. But ultimately what's going to happen is the contributions, every year we'll make a contribution to the major repair reserve, and the major repair reserve is the sole funding reserve for the capital programme. So we create a surplus in the revenue account, and that surplus is taken straight to that reserve, which then in turn funds the capital programme. That's the bit, unfortunately, at the moment we'll have to give. So that contribution will need to be reduced, and the report talks about how much that will have to come down by. But that in turn means the capital programme will need to be reduced because we can't finance it in any other shape or form. So that will mean, unfortunately, the investment in the stock will need to be revisited on the back of the stock condition survey and reprofiled over a different timescale, or the scale of the investment through the bathrooms, kitchens, guttering, roofing, all of the investment will need to be scaled back or at least reprofiled to accommodate the new level of the reserve contribution. What we're also doing as a kind of parallel work is to look again at the debt. If you remember, the HRA had to buy itself out of the subsidy system back in 2012, and at that time the council took an EIP loan over 25 years, and it took a maturity loan, and there's 3.2 million a year being paid to repay that loan. So we're going to commission some work with external financial, the company that Councillor Baxter mentioned, MUFG, I'm sure there's a catchy name, who are going to do some debt restructuring work and see if there's any opportunity for that debt to be refinanced in a different way to reduce down that contribution we're currently making. I'm not overly hopeful because at the time which we took the debt out, PWLB gave a once-in-a-lifetime reduction on the interest rates to enable all the councils to take the borrowing out, and I think it was 2%. At the moment it's running at about 6%. So we can probably profile the debt over a longer period, but the converse entry will be the interest rate we'll pay will be greater. But that's work that's underway at the minute. So we're trying to look at every which way we can help the revenue pressure in the HRA, but ultimately it'll be the reserve contribution that we'll have to give to allow it to be a balanced position in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for that and explaining, and I hope that's explained a little bit more to members here of the detail and the hard work that's going into trying to support this. So I have got Councillor Harrison and then Councillor Sawyer, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Wiles has preempted my question pretty much there. I want to say first, it's good to see an honest and transparent report. We all know the pressures on the HRA. It's well documented. I think we recognise the full scale of this. We've seen the 2.8 overspend. I'm a bit concerned there in that breakdown. I would like to know more about nearly a third of that is on regulation changes, so I'd like to see how what those regulation changes were that caused that, what it was that caused that third of the money, the overspend. The concern now for me is if we're going to, you took my question away from me, Richard, sorry. The concern for me is that we're going to have to provide value engineering, for want of a better term, moving forward. The housing team have got off to a great start. Yes, they've spent money, but again, as with the leisure centre, it's money that needed spending. It had to be done. So I've got concerns there moving forward that we are going to slip back again on the good work that they've already done. You know, I'll leave it for Mr Wiles and the clever people to work out how we're going to navigate that.
The one thing I did forget to mention is the government have consulted upon something called rent convergence, which is where some of the social rents can be harmonised to affordable rent levels, and there are opportunities for the council to consider a £1 increase on those properties. It's not all the properties, it's only those properties that are away from the affordable levels, or a £2 a week increase. We've modelled that could be about 600,000 additional rental income that the council could receive, and that is some government recognition of the pressures that are on social landlords, because it will be an additional income stream that could be contributing towards the investment in the stock. So there is something in that, but we're waiting to see if the Chancellor next week makes some further announcements about that, and whether this council, if it is on the table, is minded to take that opportunity going forward. But in terms of the outlook, then yes, it is. There are choices that are going to have to be made. For example, and it's absolutely sterling work that's been done on the void turnarounds, but that is a local target this council has set itself to bring those properties back into use a lot quicker. The logic being that you'll get renting income from those properties a lot sooner. But on some of these void properties, we're spending over £30,000. The weekly rent on a property typically is about £100. So that's £5,000 a year, but it's taken a £30,000 cost to unlock it as well. But clearly there are other objectives the council's trying to achieve by bringing stock back into use, but it is coming at a cost, and that energy that's gone behind voids is this council's decision that it's taken, but there is a cost implication in doing so. I think it's very much work in progress, and there's so many moving parts here. It's going to be quite challenging, not only for officers but also for members to reconcile what is the sweet spot that enables the service standard that you want for the tenants at the revenue, but not too much at the detriment of the capital, because we will be back to general fund 2.0, where we're doing reactive spend and we're not doing the investment, which is where the capital money is being spent currently. So we're putting out one fire but creating another one. So it's not going to be fixed today. It wasn't fixed at Cabinet, and it won't be fixed on Thursday at Council. This is a responsive action we're taking to deal with this year, but the conversation about the future is one that we'll revisit and come back at a later date with options and costed options. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to come back on that, Tim?
Thank you, Chair. Over the weekend I did a bit of a deep dive into the new Renters' Rights Bill, Rental Right Act that's come through, and there's a lot of concerning stuff in there that's going to put pressures on us as an authority for maintaining the repairs and getting certain stuff done. Is that going to put, will you include that in your, all the pressures on there, Richard? Will you include that when you're looking for answers? Because obviously anything that's in there and written in the Act, we've got to do. It's not a case of we can't, you know, we're going to have to do it.
Statutory obligations, then the budgets that are being prepared and will be presented to Cabinet in due course will factor in all of those obligations as part of that, and that is adding to those revenue budget increases that are being put forward by the team, because it is to respond to these statutory requirements that are being placed on us. So the discretionary part of the HRA is being reduced and reduced and reduced, which means ultimately that's something in all of the, when you look at the HRA revenue account, there aren't many lines left where you can go to it and go, okay, let's cut back on that part, because most of it is either statutory driven, regulated driven, or tenants' expectations of a responsible social landlord. So there isn't much to go at, which is why I'm looking at the debt, because the debt is one thing within our control we can look at. Whether, if I'm being frank, that's pushing the problem down the road in many ways, because it's just refinancing something that does have to be repaid at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. One comment and two questions based on paragraph 3.4. It seems obvious to me that the more legislation, responsibilities, obligations and costs that government piles on private landlords, the greater the demand for social housing will be put on local authorities, because private landlords will simply sell their properties. Two questions. Do we have a figure for the cost of void properties in terms of lost rent? And secondly, if tenants, or as actually said, some tenants, are leaving properties in a poor condition, does that not suggest that inspections should become more regular?
Thank you for that. Mr Wiles, are you able to help with those questions? Or Councillor Baxter?
I certainly don't know the today's figure for void foregone rent through voids. The second part of your question was, do we need more inspections? that would be a question for the Housing Committee. The Cabinet Member for Housing is shaking her head, so I don't think we do. One of the problems that we have had with inspecting houses is getting access to the property, as has been well rehearsed. Even to do essential maintenance, fire, electrical safety inspections, we've had to take court orders out against our own tenants in our own properties to do something that is to make them safe, which is expensive and frustrating. But I don't know if Mr. Wiles can offer any other data.
Yeah, I was going to make the same point about inspections. There's a tenant inbuilt right there to refuse access to properties where it's outside of statutory responsibilities. Like I say, we've had to go to courts just to maintain and repair boilers. So the Chancellor has been able to inspect property before. And of course, some of these tenants have absconded overnight as well. So it's the state in which we're finding the property as well. It's not even a responsible tenant giving us the keys back. Because on that example, we would be doing an inspection and we would be recharging where appropriate to do so. In terms of the void, the income generated from the voids, I think it's a question that probably Councillor Knowles posed at another meeting. It is something we do need to look at. But I think if you looked at it through a finance lens, you might get a different answer around the turnaround times of void properties. But I'm very mindful there are different priorities at play here, which is why properties need to be turned around a lot quicker because of the size of the housing register and the need to get families into homes. So there is that imperative that's playing it. But if you looked at it from a financial lens, I would probably suggest that the return on bringing that asset back into use is probably far smaller than the amount of cost it's taking to bring that property back into use. But there are different motivations at play.
Thank you. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. I think earlier on we spent a good 30 to 40 minutes discussing £500,000. We've had considerable number of council meetings where we've discussed for ages sort of relatively trivial sums, £20,000, £40,000 and so on. This is 3 million and I'm quite astonished in many ways. I think that considering that a considerable proportion of this has been a choice, it's been a choice that's been made even with a reserve that was provided by the Governance and Audit Committee, to have gone 3 million over that is astonishing. We're talking about 6 leisure investment reserves, we're talking about 4 Deepings leisure centres, and it's almost such a big figure that you don't realise just how big it is, but yet we spend ages arguing about a £20,000 app or whatever it's been. I appreciate that the HRA is exceptionally complicated and that it's not as straightforward as I think it is, which is why don't we just sell houses as they become void and then just take the difference until we hit the 3 million and then off we go. That would be the way you would work it. I realise it's not as simple as that. I don't really know what the answer is. I think that there's serious questions that need to be asked within Cabinet about political decisions that have been made. I'm not privy to those decisions, but these decisions have been made to go over budget. I question, with all due respect, whether or not with LGR going on, the Leader of the Council also having the financial portfolio is possibly means he's taking his eye off the ball inadvertently on this while focusing on LGR. I don't know, but this is £3 million and I think that if we were to spend as long talking about this proportionally as we've spent on other items that have only been worth a few £1,000s in the past, we'd be here for the rest of the week. I think it's shocking. I think it's absolutely shocking. I don't know what the answer is. Personally, every instinct I have says that this money shouldn't be supported through a scrutiny committee. Granted, as a political committee, as a cabinet, I can understand that, but as a scrutiny committee, it reminds me an awful lot of the Leisure SK situation, which is this may be the political choice, but it doesn't stand up to scrutiny. Thank you.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. I couldn't agree with you less. This is the man who spent some considerable time at full council arguing about the cost of burials, which is really, really, in terms of, not in terms of importance, but in terms of finance, very, very trivial. This money that we've spent is a direct consequence of the absolute neglect of housing services while the Conservative administration were in charge. The reason why we had void turnaround times of in the hundreds and why we had some long-term voids which were on there for ages is a result of a complete disinterest of the Conservatives before this administration came in. Let's not forget that housing was in special measures when we arrived here. Let's not forget that every time a house is void for any period of time, we are losing money. I don't know if I was listening to you right, Councillor Knight. You're saying that as properties become void, we should sell them. What kind of message is that to people who are on the housing register, to the many people, young and old, who are struggling to find anywhere to live whatsoever, to the people who are sofa surfing that need properties? We definitely should be expanding our portfolio of housing property. I think Mr. Wiles referred earlier on about if you looked at it purely through a finance lens, you might come to a different conclusion. People need places to live, and I think you're bringing one or two motions to a second extraordinary council meeting later this week about your concern for renters who are in houses of multiple occupation and so on, and yet here you're saying that we shouldn't be spending that money on them. We haven't spent money that we haven't got. We are improving the housing stock. We are under pressure from increasing prices and increased legislative responsibilities and so on. We're doing a blooming good job on housing, and I don't regret spending any of it. If I haven't fumed enough, then perhaps the Cabinet Member for Housing would like to join in.
I have Councillor Harrison who would actually like to speak, but Councillor Moran, have you got anything to add to that at all, please?
I'm absolutely flabbergasted, actually, at what you've just said, Gareth. I really am. Considering the amount of pressure to make it out to be a political decision. It wasn't a political decision. What we were doing was trying to get the housing department back to something looking like how it should operate. We had constant pressure from members of the opposition and that administration. Why have we got so many repairs outstanding? Why have we got so many empty houses? Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? We have the regulator on our back. We have monthly meetings. Despite coming out of special measures, we're still on monthly meetings with the regulator as he pressurises us more and more and more to get the backlog finished. We've made massive strides on the backlog. This situation isn't forever. And what do you want me not to do, Gareth? Do you want me to stop repairing houses for a bit till we make the money up? Or perhaps I'll stop buying new houses or building new houses? What would you like me to stop doing? You've also got to bear in mind the massive budget that the housing department gets through, and £3 million on top of the massive budget we already get through is not as it's a very small percentage. We've got the money there and we want to spend it on improving the housing. We've got new things coming at us all the time. AWAB's law, we knew well in advance that this was coming, so we've set up a specialist team well in advance of it actually becoming law, so that we can get on top of damp and mould, so people are getting their repairs sorted out in 48 hours sometimes, if it's serious. 48 hours. Would you rather we went back to it being 48 days? Because we can. If that's the feeling of the council, that's acceptable, we'll do it. We'll save a mint. We've got the new decent home standard coming. We're almost there on the existing decent home standard because we have to have a huge percentage of our properties up to decent home standard. Thanks to the Tories, over 40 odd years or whatever, that's a massive task. But we're almost there, and now we've got the decent home standards 2 coming in, which is up in the game for everybody across the board. Do you want us not to do that? I'm sorry, Chair, I'm losing my temper here. Thank you.
Did you want to come back?
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Moran, no one doubts for 1 second the work that and the passion that you put into the Housing Department. This isn't a personal question. This is a scrutiny committee. If we don't ask the questions, no one else will. It's our job to ask questions, and those questions will be difficult, and they should be difficult, because that is our job. We're a scrutiny committee. And I think everyone appreciates the work. I've spoken to you many times about appreciating the work that you put into housing, but we have to ask the questions. Earlier on, Councillor Knowles said prudent budgeting is good management. This wasn't budgeted for. But there was a conversation, as Mr. Wilde said earlier on, with governance and audit to create a reserve for this, and that reserve was spent. Therefore, it's perfectly reasonable that we, as a finance scrutiny committee, scrutinise the finances of that budget if that budget has gone £3 million over. Now, that doesn't mean for 1 second we don't necessarily think it's worth it, but that's for you, as the cabinet member and as the leader of the council, to argue to us. We are here to ask the questions. So please don't take my questions personally. That's absolutely not how they're designed. Councillor Baxter, yeah, I was a bit disappointed with your response. There was an awful lot of whataboutery in there. Again, we are here to ask questions. I don't understand why you're so sensitive about that. That's part of the job description. I think that when it comes to looking at how you deal with the finances, of course I don't have the answers. That's not what I'm here to do. But I'm certainly here to ask the questions, and I think that when you're going £3 million over, you should really consider what your answer to that question should be before you go that much over the budget. Because if you ask governance audit for £1 million, you could have asked them for 4. You could have planned this out in advance. You could have taken the good budgeting advice that Councillor Knowles has said, and then we wouldn't be having this conversation, because no one for 1 second wants people to be living in mould-infested homes. So that's not what this conversation is about. The conversation is about budgeting. This is a finance scrutiny committee. Thanks.
Thank you. Richard, would you like to come in at that point? I know there are other people waiting.
I just wanted to be absolutely clear. That 2.7 is standing in the shoes of March 26. So it's a forecast. At this moment in time, if you look at table 1, the actuals as at the end of September was 7 million against a budget of 10.8. So as at the end of September, we weren't overspending against that line. So what forecasting is doing is saying, okay, taking all the cost drivers as we're seeing at the moment and extrapolate that across to the end of the financial year, we're giving council notice that if all these events carry on as they are, we will be overspending. So it's the right thing to do, as in my role and to ask council, is to put the resources in place to head off the fact that you're heading for a 2.7 million overspend. I think the point being asked is, do we need to challenge on those current spending lines to say, does everything have to stay absolutely as it is? Because if it does, that's where we're heading towards. But you've heard from Councillor Moran, you've heard from the leader, we are dealing with significant backlog, and we're dealing with a regulator, and we're dealing with legislation changes. Some of those were anticipated, but the extent of which they translate into financial terms weren't known, which is why we are facing the situation we've got. The local choices, I imagine, are pretty small, and like I said, off the top of my head, the Void one is the only one I can think of where it's a local target that we have set ourselves as a council to deliver against. But that was a conscious decision this council made when it chose the Void turnaround times, but it needs resources to put it in place. I think there was an underestimation of how poor some of these properties were being left, which is obviously a significant cost driver. But I know Alison and Councillor Moran are doing their level best to ensure that that 2.7 is the upper limit, and everything they can do to get it below that, they will be doing. But I just wanted to be clear, we're not overspending at that level today. That is an assumption we're making based on the current activities. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have 3 more people who'd like to speak on this. So first is Councillor Harrison, then it's Councillor Turner, oh no, beg your pardon, Councillor Martin, and then it's Councillor Turner. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, sorry, Mr. Walsh has again preempted what I was going to say, that it's not actually spent. Right at the start, when we got elected, there was probably nobody putting more pressure on housing than myself and Councillor Cuddington. What I can tell you as a councillor now, the difference that's happened since that time is phenomenal. Mr. Wiles is preempting this now. He's telling us now that this is the situation that we're going to get into. We know that we want to continue this, or I personally do as a councillor. I want to continue this good work that's gone on. We were in a terrible state. I'm not going to get into the whys, wherefores and everything else, but when we started as councillors, we were in a terrible state. We are getting in a better place. At the end of the day, we are here, as you say, to scrutinise Councillor Knight. Yes, it's 3 million as opposed to 500 we were talking about, but we're comparing apples and pears. This is, for me, a no-brainer. It's got to happen. All what we should be scrutinising is how it happens, you know. And I've got every faith in Mr. Wiles and the team to work that out and bring it forward to us moving forward. I don't want to lose the impetus that we've got, and I think we're very, very much in danger of doing that if we demonise the spending that's being proposed. I'm very worried about that. There's been a lot of good work done here. Yes, obviously it's a shock, and we never realised how bad the situation was, but we've got to deal with that. We've got to get on with it. That's our job. So I would prefer to let Mr. Wiles go away with his team and come back to us with how they're going to. We've told them this is what we need. Let them do their job and come back and tell us how they're going to facilitate that for us.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. We have housing developments popping up all over the place, new developments, lots of money being thrown about by developers. Within those developments, there's S106 agreements that have certain elements in them, like the commuted sums for social housing. Is there no, I'm not seeing any kind of suggestion here about the increased income the HRA would get from those developers. Because these commuted sums, I know we've got a pot somewhere with this money in it. Is that not a way we can use the new developments to try and fund our existing stock, or have I completely misunderstood? Thank you.
Councillor Baxter.
Yeah, the HRA is a ring-fence fund. 106 tends to be for health, education, not for housing. No, we can't take money from 106 and put it in the HRA. It's not legally possible. Similarly, we can't, as Councillor Knight was talking about earlier on, this amount of money is for Deepings leisure centres. Well, that's just not. We can't take that. This money is in the HRA. It's kept separately in every report because it is a separate account. It's not even the same as a current account and the savings account. It is a completely separate body of work which stays within its own lane. And the receipts that we get from right to buys, they go back in there and stay in there. But there's no other way that we can cross-fertilise either from the garden waste scheme into the housing, nor from the housing into the garden waste scheme, or the leisure, or anything else. So, no, that's not possible.
Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Chair. So, having explained so eloquently how the housing revenue account works, we've got a proposal from Richard to borrow some more money so that we can fill the void if this carries on for the future. But I do share Councillor Knight's shock at the initial overspend, and I think if no one criticised it or spoke about it in this OSC, then it'd be a very rum day, wouldn't it? So we've got a plan in place, but my only worry is, will something else take it exponentially out of scale, and then we'll have to talk about it again? or will we come up with a scheme that's going to rectify this, certainly for the completion of our term as administration, for example?
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. Yeah, who knows what's on the horizon? There was talk within the recent consultation about the possibility that each time we re-let a house that they would have to have new carpets. Well, that would be a massive expense, given the number of times we re-let a house, that would have to... Certainly it would make an impact on the void rate, because you'd need a couple of days to get the carpets in, but also paying for the carpets, which the tenants mightn't even want. So that's a relatively trivial example of what may be coming along. We talked a lot about AWAB's law. I've got no problem with AWAB's law. It should be the law. But again, it's for government asking us to make bricks without straw, in saying that we've got to pick up this, and all other landlords have got to make these buildings fit, but without significant increases in rent. So the cards are stacked against us. But going back to it, you can call it whataboutery if you like, but I've just looked at a report for 2022, and this budget was £3 million underspent. I don't remember many people complaining at the time, even though we were heading full tilt at special measures. And remember, we didn't even have a housing committee under the previous administration, and certainly we didn't get any separated out reports specifically looking at housing. Housing was the forgotten cousin, or whatever the expression is. Is it a forgotten cousin? Okay, I don't want any naughty words here. So anyway, we're doing housing properly, and as a result, we've spent more than the budget. But please tell me, Councillor Turner, Councillor Harrison, Councillor Knight, as Councillor Moran asked, what would you do different? What would you not have spent the money on?
Councillor Moran, did you want to come in? I think somebody mentioned to me that you had your hand up. I do apologise, I didn't see it.
Yeah, it was towards Councillor Martin's point about all the housing developments that are popping up. I don't know whether this helps him or not, but one of the good things about these housing developments all popping up is there is depending on where they are, there's a requirement for between 10 and 30% of the properties to be affordable. A certain percentage of that percentage have to be social housing. So that's either through housing associations or the local council. We have benefited really well from the fact that housing associations were wary of buying their share of properties, as it were, because of the high mortgage rates. So we've been in the happy position of being able to have a frank and honest discussion with the developers on price of properties, and we've managed to do some really, really good deals on providing brand new homes. The advantage to that, of course, is that if I buy a house, as soon as these properties are handed over, within 6 weeks of the properties being handed over to us, we're collecting rent, which you don't get from building. Building our own houses is expensive, and it could be a year from turning the first spade to actually getting somebody in and rented. So if that helps with the contribution that these new developments are making, which I think was your point, that was all. That was the only answer.
Thank you. Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if this is relevant, and I admit it's an answer supplied by AI, but it tells me that SKDC has usable reserves of £67 million. I just throw that out there.
Mr Wiles, you just came back in time. Would you like to...
I beg to differ.
AI tells me I've got 67 million in reserves. Usable reserves. Yeah, busted then. I don't recognise that figure, I'm afraid. I'd have to go back to AI to validate it. The reserves are laid out in the council report, and I'm happy to share that if that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's been a really useful discussion, and it's obviously a very emotive discussion. And, you know, everybody is entitled to their viewpoint, and we are a scrutiny committee. So, you know, for people to be able to scrutinise finances, this is the right place to do that. And I think we've done that today. And I don't think it's about upsetting anybody, so I hope that nobody goes away from here today feel upset by it. So this report is for noting. We've reviewed it, and it is for noting. So we will move on to agenda item 12, which is the local council tax support scheme, which we have to consider and comment on the feedback and recommend to Cabinet a no change local council tax support scheme. And this is going to be presented again by Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. We're asking for consideration and comment on the feedback from the consultation and a recommendation to Cabinet of a no-change local council tax support scheme. Every year we are required to review our council tax support scheme to determine its sustainability and consider any potential changes. Despite the scheme being a local scheme, due to the nature of protection provided to pensioners and vulnerable working age customers, there will always be an element of cost that the council has to incur and for which it has no influence over. Due to the protection from changes to pensioners and vulnerable working age customers, any proposed reduction in costs of the scheme can only be applied to the 883 working age claimants, which is only 12% of the caseload. That means that out of a current council spend of 737,000, only 89,000 can actually be influenced by a change to the current scheme. The scheme is determined locally by the council, having undertaken consultation with the precepting authorities, key stakeholders and residents. We did a consultation for a no-change scheme during September, and of the 7,243 surveys issued, 440 people responded. A response rate of 6%, which I think is not that bad given that it's a no-change scheme. We weren't presenting anything fundamentally radical or revolutionary. It's a no-change scheme. In addition, an email was sent to all members, parish clerks, major preceptors, meaning the police and the county council, and citizens' advice. 83% of residents agree with the principles of the current scheme, and 84% of the council felt the council had worked hard to ensure the scheme is fair, protects vulnerable groups and responds to local concerns. The proposed no-change scheme was also supported by the county council and the police and crime commissioner, as detailed in Appendix 2 and 3. Therefore, I encourage you to recommend to Cabinet, which is that funny thing again where I'm asking you to give me feedback. It is therefore proposed that no changes are made to the scheme and the current core elements of the 25-26 scheme, detailed in paragraphs 2.13 to 2.34, are retained and continue. So, no change, please.
Thank you for that. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's really reassuring to see such strong support for the council tax support scheme. But if I can just ask, on the discretionary council tax payment fund, if I'm reading it right, we've got about 30k in the pot this year, and so far we've only spent about 8.5. Now, I've asked this question elsewhere, but I'll just get it out in this committee if I can. Do we think that's because people don't know about it, or because the criteria are tight? And if that's the case, is there more we can do to make sure households who are really struggling know that this extra help exists?
Thank you. Claire, would you like to come in there, please?
Thank you. Through you, Chairman. I do think you're right, Councillor Harrison. There is an element that people maybe don't know that it exists. The majority of the awards do go to those who are in receipt of a discretionary housing payment, or they've applied for a discretionary housing payment, and then we will look to award a council tax payment alongside of that. We are doing more to promote this, to ensure that we can undertake that take-up during Q4, and then we'll continue to do that as business as usual during the next financial year. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. I know that we have it in our papers, but just for the record, could the leader confirm that the County Council, under it, because it has changed political control recently, the County Council has said they are content with the current scheme and have not suggested any specific amendments that they may wish to make hay out of in the next few months? Thank you.
Councillor Baxter.
That is my firm belief.
Max, did you have a question? Sorry, did you put your hand up? I didn't notice.
Oh,
sorry.
Simply, as Ashley proposed it, I would like to second it. Oh, you can't. Then in that case, I propose.
Okay, so we've got no more questions, so let's move on to, we have Max who's going to propose this. Tim, you're seconding. All those in favour, please. Those against? And abstentions? Okay. So we move forward on to agenda item 13. This one again is the discretionary payment policy. So it's to consider and comment on the feedback, recommend to Cabinet the discretionary council tax payment policy for 26-27, with a change to limit the amount of household capital to 4,000, and recommend to Cabinet a no change discretionary housing benefit policy. And this is going to be presented again by Councillor Baxter, please.
Thank you. Once again, we have done a consultation. The recommendations are before you, and so is the discretionary council tax payment policy document, which is appended to the report. It's recommended a no change. The report details for 2 discretionary payment policies which are reviewed each year. These policies are important because they provide flexibility and support available to eligible residents, as well as alleviating poverty, which we're keen on, preventing homelessness, which we're keen on, and addressing individual needs, which we are also keen on. The administration of the discretionary council tax payment policy is at the council's discretion. Hence, we call it a discretionary council tax payment policy. Funding is solely provided by SKDC, and each year provision of 30,000 is made. We have a policy which sets out eligibility of the scheme. It's proposed to make one change to the policy from the 1st of April 2026, which is to limit the amount of household capital to £4,000. This is in line with the discretionary housing payment policy. The administration of a discretionary housing payment policy is based on guidance from the DWP, as well as areas of eligibility which are at the discretion of the council. Funding is determined by the DWP on an annual basis. For 26-27, the DWP have provisionally confirmed no change to the existing funding allocation, which is just short of £156,000, and an integration of the discretionary housing payment into the Crisis Resilience Fund will be a phased approach by March 2029. So, other than the change to the household capital threshold, there's no further changes proposed to the scheme. Both policies and relevant changes were included as part of a local council tax support consultation, with 90% of respondents agreeing to the policies and that they should continue next year. Happily take any questions.
Thank you. So Councillor Harrison and then Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to see we're keeping these going, and as Councillor Baxter said, 90% of the people responding to the consultation wanted them to continue. These policies are a clear lifeline to residents who are in short-term crisis, and it's good to see them being reviewed. But bringing in, I'm just putting this out there as a question, bringing this 4,000 saving limit, I understand the logic, but with the cost of living pressures going the way they are, and they are going to increase, we know that, are we comfortable with telling a low-income family with, say, £4,500 in the bank that they're all right? I know we have to draw a line. I know we have to draw a line in the sand somewhere. But is there a way? Firstly, I think Councillor Baxter might have touched on it. I don't know whether it was advice from national government or whatever. But how did we decide that 4,000 was the right cut-off? And do we have anything in place that will monitor the impact on people who are just above that? You know, those people with 4,500, 4,600. Is there anything in place to monitor that and the effect it might have on them?
Claire, would you like to come in there?
Thank you. Through you, Chairman. The reason why we've done this is because you're right, there does need to be a cut-off. If they are, for your example, they have £4,500 of capital and they do use that and then they are still in crisis and still need support, we will absolutely reconsider the application if they drop below that 4,000. We will monitor this. Any change that we propose and then implement, we always monitor. So if we do find that it is having an adverse impact on our residents, on the applicants, we will review that. We'll consider that. It may be that we, if the impact is so significant, it may be that we need to take a delegated decision to the Deputy Chief Executive in year. But we will review that as we continue. But unfortunately, yes, we do need to have a cut-off, and that does need to be there to ensure that we can try and spread the limited pot as much as possible.
Did you want to come back on that, Tim?
Yeah, please, Chair. Are we communicating that to those people, Claire, as well as we're moving along, that you will be monitoring it and that they, should they drop, they can come back to you? Are we communicating that to them?
Thank you. Through you, Chairman. I hadn't thought of that, so I will speak to the team and ensure that if the decision is made that that's the reason why, then we do put in a paragraph into the letter to say if your circumstances change, you can make a reapplication.
Thank you. Councillor Martin and then Councillor Sawyer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. Do we work towards this £30,000 contribution level? Do we keep a close eye on whether we have any funds available as it progresses? Because obviously it's not inflation linked. I was just wondering if it's enough. Does it need to be increased?
Claire, can I bring you in again there, please?
Thank you. Through you, Chairman. So we monitor this on a monthly basis. Last year we had a very small underspend of £82. I think it was raised at the last committee that we would continue to review this, and should there be a need to increase it, then that would be through delegated decision in year to the Deputy Chief Executive. I do feel that with the change to Household Support Fund, which is now being brought in as part of Crisis and Resilience Fund, there is funding within that that will allow us to also support residents that could have been supported through the discretionary council tax payment. So there is additional money that could be available. We don't have that eligibility currently. We'll get that in January. So, but by the nature of the title of it being in crisis, then we are hoping that there could be some support that we can provide through that as well.
Thank you. Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the only alternative to a cut-off would be a taper, and I think I would cringe at the thought of the administrative cost of implementing that.
Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm fully satisfied with Claire's come back that there's got to be. It's just that and that they're monitoring those people that just fall outside of that. So I've got no issues with that anymore. But in the report it mentions about the support ongoing. So are we confident that as well as getting the one-off payment, that these people that are struggling are getting the full package of advice. So it mentions that the Welfare and Financial Advice team are linking in with housing and external partners like Citizens Advice and that. Can I just get a report back on that, how that is working? Is it working in actual fact? Are we getting that support to them as well as the payment?
Claire, please. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Chairman. Yeah, anecdotally, I can certainly give you that assurance, but what I will do is get some case studies for you so that we can show just how we are supporting those residents and tenants specifically. We do have a good link in with all of the service areas, so the council tax team also report into me, as do the rent team, so there is liaison where we've got permission from the resident with those teams, and as you've mentioned, Councillor Harrison, with the Welfare Financial Advice team, and also with Citizens Advice as well. So if there is anything that we're not able to support with, or the needs are more complex, then we will refer into CA. But I'm more than happy to provide you with some case studies on that.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, so can I have a proposer for this recommendation, please? So Councillor Harrison, Councillor Sawyer as a seconder. All those in favour, please. Unanimous. Okay, thank you for that. The next part of it is the work programme for February. So we have the Q3 budget monitoring report. David, do you want to come in here? Yeah.
Yeah, I think just in light of obviously the HRA possession, I think we'll probably end up just sort of splitting those reports out again as we have done this time in terms of a general fund HRA rather than a combined one. So I think we'll probably look to do that again.
That's great, and I think it's really useful if we can do that. We should hopefully have the closure report on Turnpike Depot, the UK SPF allocation update, economic development strategy update, and car parking charges. Something I don't see there is any update on St Martin's Park. Is that something we're likely to be able to have come February, because things are progressing, but obviously we don't have a report every time? Is that something, David, that we can have there, or would it go to be further forward?
I'd have to double check with Richard, Chair, because I'm not as close to it as he is, so he may be able to at that point be able to provide some more update, but I'll mention it to him so that he can feedback through yourself and Gareth and Amy.
Councillor Baxter?
Thank you. I'd certainly support you adding that to the list, perhaps on the unscheduled items. I thought that March was some kind of point in time regarding St Martin's Park, so if it's not February, then it should be not so long afterwards. I mean, I really want the St Martin's Park box to be opened and examined properly, because there's a lot in there.
Councillor Sawyer?
On that one, Chairman, if I may, my understanding is the delay to St Martin's Park is totally down to National Grid. And I think we should record it's nothing to do with SKDC. It is entirely National Grid not getting their act together and carrying out the electrical work.
Okay, we would need to clarify that, but Councillor Knight?
I think that kind of speculation is the reason why we need a report in February. The other question was the fees and charges document that normally comes up around about that time. I know it comes up a little bit early. Is that going to be coming to us first, or does that just go straight to the January full council?
No, it comes to budget scrutiny. Looking at this morning with Richard, so I think it does come to the budget scrutiny meeting. We've got a fair, we started with action. We'll talk about that in terms of the timetable, so you'll get that as part of that. Then it goes on to cabinet, which then goes to council. Yeah.
Apologies, I forgot about the existence of budget scrutiny. Thank you.
Fun day.
Is that coming to February then, David? The fees and charges, or not?
Budget scrutiny is January. I think it's the 13th, if memory serves, on the diary, yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Baxter, did you have your hand up?
It was the same thing. It's definitely on the list to come to full council at the end of January, and the joint budget scrutiny, where all all the players from all the different committees get together is middle of January. So we've got that to look forward to.
Thank you very much. I think we can declare the meeting closed. I'm not sure which clock it is. At 12:40. Thank you all for your input today, and speak to you soon.